Welcome to the weekend edition of the Fast Five by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and hello, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, on weekdays, it's all about the Fast Five, where we go through the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, though, we, of course, still keep it to 5 minutes, but we are going to pick out the biggest story of the week, the sleeper story, which is one that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, the most remarkable story, and then our favourite story. So let's get into it. What was the biggest story of the week?
I think there was only one really big story, and I think you're going to agree with me on this one. The decision by the Reserve Bank to lift the official cash rate by 50 basis points sent the share market lower, the Australian dollar higher, bond yields higher. People with a mortgage of about $500,000 over 25 years will be paying about $200 a month extra. That's when you combined this week's increase and last month's increase. Such a big jump. The Reserve Bank had hinted it was going 25 basis points. The shock of 50 basis points is what really fed through to the economy. The economy's not doing too bad. We find out about unemployment next week, but really there's plenty of jobs around, and that's part of the reason why the Reserve Bank is lifting interest rates, but really shocked the whole market this week.
Yeah, absolutely. It is by far the biggest story of the week, so I'm completely with you there. Let's move on to most remarkable story. Can I nominate one for this? And it's really about Anthony Albanese becoming such an impressive international statesman, because he had a slightly kind of shaky election campaign, but as soon as he won, it seems he's flicked the switch to jet-setting Prime Minister. And the pace is pretty remarkable. He spent the first part of this week in Indonesia, where he was pushing for deeper ties with our most populous neighbour. Then later in the week, he hosted the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, in Sydney, the first foreign leader to visit since the election. Add to that, since the election, they've had the lightning visit to the Quad, meeting with the leaders of the US, India, Japan, Foreign Minister Penny Wong in Fiji, Tonga and Samoa. The Defence Minister Richard Marles has been in Singapore. There's talk of more trips coming up. It's only been 3 weeks since the election, Sean. That is a cracking pace. Shows a pretty remarkable focus on foreign relations too.
Yeah, very true. Look, my most remarkable story for the week were the figures that came out that showed used car prices have jumped 18% over the past year. Remember the old adage, you lost about 25% of the value of your car as you drove it out of the car yard? No more. In fact, since early 2020, used car prices are up 79%. Quite amazing.
Yeah, certainly is. Let's look at the sleeper story this week, the one that's maybe not getting the attention that it deserves. What was it for you?
Well, it's Apple going into financial services, not the fact that they've launched a buy now, pay later product, Apple Pay Later. It's the fact that they haven't partnered with a big bank, and in fact, Apple will make the loans itself. It's becoming a financial services firm. Now, when you've got 1.8 billion active iPhone users and you decided to get into an industry, everyone in that industry should be scared. They've done it in music, they've done it in media and TV. They're now pushing into financial services, not just the technology, actually doing the loans. Quite a remarkable story and could well revolutionise financial services.
All right, my sleeper story is a little bit different. It comes out of New Zealand, and there's a plan there. It's a draft plan to put a price on agricultural emissions. The goal is to tackle one of the country's biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions, which is the methane that comes out of 26 million sheep and 10 million cattle. Apparently, nearly half of New Zealand's greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture, but they've been exempt so far from the carbon trading scheme there. Why is it a sleeper story? Because Australian livestock have a bit of a gas problem too. Agriculture contributes about 13% of our own greenhouse gas emissions each year. About half of that is methane. Could we see something similar here? Maybe that's what Jacinda Ardern and Anthony Albanese were discussing over dinner on Thursday night. I speculate.
I love how serious you are on that story.
Yes, yeah, it's a fascinating story, that one. Sean, your favourite story, what was it?
Oh, look, it was the humble puffer jacket turning 100 years old. The guy who invented it, George Finch, did so ahead of a 1992 British Mount Everest expedition. He called it an eider jacket. It was bright green, made from the skin of a hot air balloon and stuffed with eider down. Long way from the tweed some of his fellow climbers were wearing. Anyway, it worked, and 100 years later, we're still wearing puffer jackets.
Yeah, it's a good one. My favourite story was the Boris Johnson story. We haven't seen the end of it. The UK Prime Minister has been under the pump, caught out attending and hosting parties at 10 Downing Street during COVID lockdowns. The rest of the UK was isolating. That was bad. Infringements were issued. He was criticised in a report. He was humbled, said everyone should just move on. His colleagues don't want to move on. In fact, 40% of them want him gone. This week, there was a no confidence vote in Parliament. He's only got 3/5 of Conservative MPs still backing him. They can't have another no confidence vote for a year. year. So Boris says once again that it's time to move on. I just love how thick-skinned he is. And I just kind of really feel like it's not the end of it with so many of his own MPs and a big chunk of the public still pretty angry. It's going to be a fascinating time in the UK.
Sure is.
All right, there we go. 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll be back on Monday morning with the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and this is the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed.